So let's suppose you have applied for a category manager role at, let's say, companies like Amazon or Flipkart. Now it has been almost 3 weeks and you didn't hear anything from the HR or the hiring manager. Now you will get anxious and probably you will hear from someone saying that your resume was rejected by a AI machine, or by the ATS. And you will assume that your resume has been rejected by a system rather than a human, which is basically a myth. And that is what I'm going to cover in this video. Because that anxiety of the resume getting rejected by an AI or by a system makes you do things which you don't want to do. You try to over optimize the resume, you try to add a lot of keywords, you send a lot of follow up messages, but those things are not going to help you. You have to keep that in mind. So in this video I will tell you what happens once you press that submit button. So I will discuss this in a step by step basis and I will explain you what does the system actually do and how does the entire process looks like. So now let us first understand what exactly ATS stands for. ATS is nothing but your applicant tracking system. It is sort of a CRM for you, but then this CRM is not for the customers but majorly for the candidates. And every large company, be it Amazon, Flipkart, Meesho, usually uses the ATS system. Because whenever you hire people at scale, you typically need a system at the back end that can take care of all the automation, that can manage all the workflows for you. And that is what ATS does. So it helps the recruiters to manage the entire workflows end to end. So any kind of an offer letter which is released by the company or any kind of resume which is submitted by the candidate, it stays on the ATS system. So often a lot of people make ATS their villain and they think that the resume has been rejected by the ATS, but that is seldom the case. It is always rejected by the human, and human is the final decision making authority. ATS is just to manage your workflow, nothing else. ATS actually helps you sort the entire process because there is thousands of applications that come in on a daily basis, and this system ensures that as a human you don't actually miss out on any application. So ATS is not actually the villain, it is sort of a managing workflow optimization tool. So let's talk about what happens once the candidate submits the resume in the systems. So I will take you through the entire journey once the company decides to recruit candidates till the point they extends the offer letter to selected candidates. And once you understand this, you will know that ATS is not a black box that people make it. It is actually a workflow automation system, nothing else. So the stage one of this process is basically the creation of the role. So what happens is there is a category manager or maybe a category lead who decides that they need some people to manage the new categories or to build some new categories. Let's suppose you want a category manager to manage the grocery vertical. So the process is like this. So let's suppose there is a category head. Now that category head will go to the HR and will ask the HR to approve a hiring in the system. So a request will be created in the system and this request will be assigned a job ID. After this, a approval chain will be created, and you would need approvals of not just the HR but probably the finance team also, and maybe the manager or the director of the team also. And once that budget is approved, post that only the job description is created in the system, and after that it will be put on the career site or it will be put on the other sites like LinkedIn or naukri.com or whatever. So just keep in mind that a lot of times when the job opening is posted on LinkedIn or any other third party job hunting site, ideally that opening is created in the system 2 to 3 weeks back. In fact, a lot of times the openings that you see on LinkedIn or any other job portal are actually the delayed openings. And a lot of times openings are closed in the system but still they are there on LinkedIn or any other website. So always keep that in mind. There's a time lag between the opening in the system versus the opening that is there on the third party websites. So I always recommend people to apply from company's internal career portal. Now the stage 2 of the process is basically that applications start to come in. So a lot of candidates apply to the opening that is there on the system, and your resume enter this ATS system and it is part of the queue which is there, and all the resumes are there as part of this queue. Now the job of the system is here to parse the data. They actually structure the data depending on the work experience, location, the kind of roles that you have done in the past, or maybe certain kind of keywords that the system looks for. It even checks your skills, it checks the education, it checks the previous companies, it even checks the total experience you have. And basis on those parameters, the system categorize the different resumes. So a lot of times companies put different kind of filters, and as per those filters they decide which candidates they want to proceed with. Now this has nothing to do with ATS. These filters are basically set up by the hiring manager, which is the human. So the filters can be about experience level, or it can be about past designation, or it can be about the location, or it can be about like which year you graduated. So basis on those filters, the CV further moves along the stage. The only thing that as a candidate you have to keep in mind, that there should not be any kind of a formatting error, because system will find it difficult to parse the data, and in case of those difficulties the system might miss out on certain things which is there on the resume, but the system cannot read it just because there was some kind of a formatting error. So keep that in mind. You just need basically a clean formatting so that system can actually parse your data correctly. Now the stage 3 of the process is basically the recruiter review. Now a lot of candidates think that this step doesn't happen in reality, but that is not the case. So there is a human that goes through this entire stack of resumes, and human usually gives almost 20 seconds to let's say 40 seconds to decide which resume they want to go forward with. So they just look for signals which are important for the role. Ideally those signals should be there in the CV, and that is why I suggest a lot of people to bold the right kind of keywords. So this is the stage where a human is deciding whether your CV is getting selected or rejected. A lot of times people think that system is rejecting the CV, but that is not the case. So the question that you should ask yourself is not if your resume beat the system. The right question to ask is whether you are able to communicate the right things in that first 10 to 20 seconds when your CV is being considered by a human. After this, the next stage is basically your interviews, and as per those interviews certain notes are made in the system which stays there forever. So the hiring manager or basically the HR can schedule a phone call with the candidate, and they ask certain questions with respect to the salary expectations or experience, or the past roles that the person has done. On the basis of that phone call they input some kind of information into the system, and basis on that information the further steps are decided. So whatever feedback the hiring manager has, or whatever assessment is there of the hiring manager, entirely everything goes into the system, and that is kept in the system to be referred by the subsequent hiring managers who take the further round of interviews. So just keep this in mind. Whenever you apply to any company, that record is always there in the system. Especially all the big companies maintain this record. After this, the last stage, which is the stage 5, is basically the offer letter and your onboarding process. So understand this step also happens inside the ATS system. So once the hiring manager decides to proceed with a candidate, it goes through certain approval stages. First, HR has to approve. Second, the business finance team has to approve in terms of the compensation which has been decided. And if required, the leadership might have to approve. So keep that in mind. A lot of times you get confirmation from the hiring manager, but then it takes certain time for you to receive the offer letter. And the reason is that this process takes some time. It can even take weeks depending on the organization. Once this is done, the offer letter is finally released to the candidate. And once you accept the offer, this ATS system hands over your details to the onboarding team. Then they do the background verification, they check for the document verification, they check for your ID and everything. And after that, finally you are onboarded into the company. So 3 things you have to keep in mind. ATS as a system never rejects your resume. It is always the human. The second thing is that formatting matters a lot, And it is not because a AI system is rejecting or selecting your CV. It is because so that your resume can be parsed properly by the system. So always use a clean, simple formatting which is easier for any parser to read. The third thing to keep in mind is that the system has memory. If you have applied to the same company again and again with the same resume, they have data for that. So try to change something meaningful in the resume before you apply again. So in the next video, we will go further deeper into one of the process. So we will understand how does the recruiters filter and shortlist the candidates, what sort of parameters they look for in the resume, and things that can move you from the queue to the shortlist. So we will talk it in terms of the category management roles. In case you found this video fruitful, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Also, if you are genuinely serious about category management roles, I have made 2 detailed courses for which the links is there on the description. I have even made certain guides that can help you crack the category management interviews. So feel free to check it out. All the links are there in the description, and I will see you in the next video.